Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Today we're going to be making a Damascus hunting knife. The first step to forging a knife is to forge in the tip of the knife. And then the second step that I like to do is to forge in the tang. Forging a blade isn't a necessary part of knife making, but it's a part that I enjoy, and in between heats it lets me practice my knife juggling. After forging in the general profile of the knife and then forging in the bevels, I like to rough grind it before I harden it. This lets me do a couple things. One, it lets me get the profile dialed in just how I want it, and two, it lets me get a sneak peek at the Damascus pattern. After doing all the initial forging and rough grinding, now it's time to harden the blade. This is done by heating the blade up to around 1500 degrees and sticking it in warmed up canola oil. What this quenching process does is it takes all those molecules in the steel and contracts them super duper quickly, which hardens the knife blade. The last part of making a blade is the polishing phase, and then for a Damascus knife you have to etch it to bring out the different patterns. I like to etch it and then use a leather belt to bring out the shininess, and then I just use regular instant coffee to get a nice contrasting finish between the two different types of steel. With the blade finished, it's time to start on the handle. The first thing I do is cut out a block of micarta and then sand that to shape, get it nice and square. This hunter has what's called a hidden tang, so there's no visible metal exposed from the blade that's going into the handle. This micarta is the part of the handle called the bolster, so it's the part that goes right up against the blade, so I like to use a Dremel to get a nice tight fit. Now that I have the bolster fit up to the blade, it's time to move on to the bulk of the handle material. This is called stabilized ammonia burl. After getting the bulk of the handle material fit up exactly how I want it, I move on to shaping. What I like to do is get the profile dialed in, and then I start rounding out all the corners and making it ergonomic. With this knife, I wanted to try some carving on the handle, so I drew on some vines and then took a small carbide burr and removed all the handle material around the lines I wanted to have carved in. After getting all the carving exactly how I want it, I move on to polishing the handle up to 1000 grit. The epoxy that I'm using to glue the handle onto the blade is called West Systems G-Flex Super Epoxy. Gluing up a knife is normally a very stressful process if you're using a 5-minute epoxy, but this is a 24-hour slow curing epoxy, which makes it super strong and much less stressful to glue up. And with that, the knife is finished. It features a 250-layer ladder pattern Damascus blade, an ammonia burl and micarta handle with vine carving and vine stippling. If this video hasn't put you to sleep yet, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and like this video. And with that, it's time to go on to making the sheath for this knife. I'm using veg tan leather. Veg tan leather becomes pliable when it gets wet, so in order to tool it, I have to put it under some water and then I can go ahead and stamp my pattern in there. Now that all the tooling is done, I like to dye the sheath with an antique leather dye. And then I use some contact cement to stick all the different layers of the sheath together. The contact cement alone won't be able to hold the sheath together forever, so I drill out holes for some stitching.